Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast. Lehr with me, your host Imperial Dane. We'll be having ourselves the topic of today. What is that, you wonder? It is smoke neben. And rather the basics of it, the very sort of basics of it, because ultimately I do believe smoke is going to be one of those topics I'll be sort of gradually expanding upon through numerous videos as things go on, because really, I mean, it really does a lot. It has so many uses, just like having an actual war. And of course, right now, of course, people are just barely, really scratching at it. We're just seeing the basics of basics. For example, right here, the common pop a smoke grenade at the MG42, thus obfuscating it using the noble, well, less than noble shock troopers for the purpose. The other one, which is sort of reasonably commonly used, though also getting neglected a bit, is, panzer tacticium. Ultimately, smoke works through the fog of war. And of course, basically by obfuscating line of sight. Of course, it can be negated by, having someone peep on the other side of it. That, of course, is another side, sort of the basic weakness of smoke. And, if you have someone actually looking on the other side, you can get what at it, because then someone's, actually observing for you. But still, in that regard, smoke possesses already there a strong defensive, but also an offensive purpose. In this case, of course, we're seeing the basic offensive purpose, for example, clearing up for an assault by ensuring the other bastards can't see you, thus they can't shoot at you. Thus, you can get close with your assault troops, like, for example, the shock troops. So, of course, already there, one purpose of smoke, one usage of smoke, and, of course, I mean, the smoke grenade itself, wonderfully cheap and wonderfully, great in purposes. It can be used offensively, it can be used defensively. Use it to cover retreat, use it to cover a vehicle trying to get out of there, or offensively use it to try and cover up a vehicle, ensure your opponent can't see it until it's too late, for example. All these kinds of purposes in that regard, smoke is absolutely grand, and again, it is absolutely underestimated, in how absolutely many purposes are there. And of course, there are numerous units throughout the game. The sort of real non-doctrinal unit that can really sort of provide constant smoke, though, is the mortar, and even then, of course, it's not really used a lot, but again, it can be used for offensive purposes, for defensive purposes, and in theory, it can even be used for diversionary purposes, but I don't think, the overall usage of smoke has really reached a level where it can actually be used for that, because that also requires there's a lot of offensive smoke usage, and of course it relies on you then using that knowledge to again divert your opponent's attention by saying, oh goodness gracious, he's laying down smoke, assault incoming, and then in reality the assault's coming elsewhere, for example. And that could be a use of diversionary smoke in theory, but again it rather requires, and again the understanding of smoke has been made pervasive enough, and the usage of smoke has been pervasive enough. But again, it's taken some time, because even again, the much maligned amongst Soviet players, panzer tacticium, actually took weeks, if not months, to sort of, really pass through. And so, oh, hey, this stuff is great. Same with smoke grenades. I mean, they really didn't see much usage until now, but again, some of the really, good players began using it, and now everyone else is sort of, also beginning catching up to the fact that, oh, hey, smoke grenades, it's actually pretty cool, obfuscating my opponent's line of sight, thus allowing me to close in on him. How awesome. And we're seeing the same, for example, also with the officer for the Germans popping down smoke barrages. I mean, again, smoke is, really doing a lot of things here in the game, and it's wonderful. But again, I also think, a few videos here and there might, help people get a bit of a better grasp of it. So again, here, sort of one of the basics of smoke, the offensive smoke usage. Popping it right there, allowing it to close in. So that is, for example, is one usage of smoke. And let's pop on and have a look at another usage of smoke, because, smoke, neben. And moving on to the next lesson of smoke, situations where perhaps smoke is not so grand, or doesn't do so much. Right here, for example, you might think, great, he's just covered, again, that's the defensive usage, so great, he's just covered up his flak panzer. Just two problems. One particular right here is, he might have not thrown it at the best place, right here, perhaps a bit too far away from his flak panzer, though in this case I imagine the crew is rather, Niet! Carcinogenics! We might get lung cancer in 10 to 15 years! Niet! And I was hoping to live a long and wonderful life, but, besides that point, because I don't think they really cared about what they used in those smoke bombs. Anyways, there's just one slight detail here besides, the proximity, and that's rather, the flak panzer has a damaged engine. In this case, it's not really going to get any far. I mean, it's just going to end up in one of those cartoons, where the villain goes, ah ha ha! You might have won this time, Captain Communist, but I will get away and spread my fascist ways another day. And then poof, and of course, as soon as the smoke covers, he's still there trying to, get away, but not very gracefully. just like here, for example. In this case, of course, again, due to the proximity, I mean, that's not even a problem. The H-35 just sort of drives through it and shoots it up, so... I mean, when utilizing smoke, again, you know, consider distance, consider, you know, where you might sort of be popping up, but also consider, again, you know, can the intended target you're trying to sort of cover up for with the smoke actually get out of there? If it can't, then, you know, you might be wasting munitions. Just a thought. Again, a little hint here to sort of, you know, perhaps help you overcome some of the initial teething issues when it comes to actually, you know, your first time when you use smoke. So a little one here, and of course this factor, they went on an absolute rampage before it was finally taken down, but again, a little hint there, a little thought there. I'll just move on to show you a good usage of smoke. Oh, by the way, a good usage. Here we go again, back in the action, still sort of the same fight, but now we're getting a bit of a use of smoke bombs. Overall, it's actually a quite handy defensive ability. Overall, though, of course, you can use defense, but it's a bit hard to sort of decide because, you know, it rather throws in a line and not necessarily sort of when you throw it at the enemy, you sort of get the line you want, whereas defensively, it might be less important. But it can also, for example, be really great for something coming in advantage. Of course, again, you know, you can sort of cut more. But let's see here. Half track here coming under fire, but noting here. Flies in, and in this case, much better proximity. In this case, completely obfuscates the line of sight for the H-35, although might have wanted to move a bit further, but still, again, one usage of smoke. Again, nice line here, which again, for example, also, if you've got infantry being hunted down, and they're running, say, down a route where you know where those might be safe, you know, smoke along it, and oh, suddenly they're running through the smoke, so that, you know, the opponent can't see them. Also nicely there, but that's a much better defensive use of smoke. There's defensive when you sort of want to use it to cover your own units up. For example, when they're pulling away, on the threat of being shot at something. And for example, again, it's also a nice way of negating the long range of the H-35, you know. In particular, if the devil who's using them is not even spotters, in which case he really can't use it because all of a sudden there's a huge amount of smoke right in front of it. So again, remember, smoke can be used offensively, it can be used defensively, but again, do think a bit about it. And again, you know, if the opponent actually has some way of actually seeing what's on the other side of the smoke, you might as well not bother. And of course, if you're using defensively, ensure that the unit you're trying to cover for can actually get out of there. Otherwise, again, you're wasting munitions. So, a little fun fact there in overall smoke usage for you ladies and gentlemen. Sort of, again, briefly explaining the very basics of it, the very thoughts of it. Again, you know, offensively, defensively, showing some of the units and what we can do it with. Of course, I'll be sort of going into more depth around, for example, different smoke usages, also perhaps more specific smoke tactics, but again, you know, just want to really get the idea, and you know, you want to use smoke, it actually can make a huge difference for you in a fight. Either as the Soviets or as the Germans, again, it can make a world of a difference. It can also, for example, be used, you know, to cover up a point. You're about to take a point, you know the opponent's got guns on it, you pop down smoke on the point, then you take it and the opponent can't see you taking it. So for example, that's also another way of doing it. So, I hope this little video has been enlightening. Again, this is just the very basics of smoking. Again, it's also a bit tricky, and finding a good video sort of really shows it off, and I'm thankful for Karanas here actually showing it off. But overall, I mean, you know, try and think about it and actually try to make some good use of your smoke in a match. And I'm sure you'll find yourself actually doing a lot better in your games overall, I believe. I mean, mortars, doctrine abilities, like say smoke bombs or smoke grenades, or the officer popping in smoke. There's all sorts of opportunities, of course. Panzer tactician, even Panzer tactician can be used not just to cover the tank in question, could also, for example, be used for, say, for a vehicle, popping in, laying down a smoke screen to cover up another unit. There are tons of opportunities with smokes, you know. Try and get some smoke usage out of this after you watch this video and gone, great, now I want to use smoke, but not inhale it. So, this is Imperial Dane saying cheers.